Hi, guys. It's me, Suze, again, with a burning question. Do you know who's at your door? Let me show you a little about mine. There we go. Whoa, whoa, whoa. All right, guys. Believe it or not, let me show you another phenomena in progress. For those of you that watched my last live stream, I showed you how your camera can get turned around on you and you wind up in a video. On this one, you see, here's this 1D image, or 2D, whatever you want to call it. It's not a door. It has no depth. It's like a screenshot image. And sure as anything, what do we get from this message? Here's somebody right behind an image that looks like my front door. And that's why I asked, who's at your front door? Because I would surely much rather have a phenomena like that than the one we're going to talk about today. So, I've been putting this off for a while now, and it's really hard for me to describe this book properly. When I first looked at it, I thought it was one thing. And then as I started reading it, I realized, wow, it's something totally different. Now, no matter what, it's going to offend you. And, I mean, join the club, right? But this is called Dynamic Freedoms. And what's in this book is our freedom documents, and it says Communism, enemy of all freedoms, separation of church and state, and free enterprise, an American invention. And of course, I'm from the Show Me State. So I guess I needed to get schooled, right? Where I'm going to start you, though, is with the impression or the imagining that this is a rule book. You know, like you used to see the movies where the one football team would go steal the other team's playbook. This is what it vibrates to me like. And the question that I have for you is it possible or even probable that the words communism and a new world order would actually be synchronistic to one another in regard, and nobody knows it? And could it be that the commies are at our door and we didn't know it because we invented freedom? So see, all these bullshit labels people put on things that start all these wars and all these fights, and it's mind-blowing to me. So I wanted to read you a little about this, and I'm at the table of contents, as you can see, and there's this lovely octopus on the globe, right? And it says we're supposed to know our enemies so we don't get choked or something. But we've got introduction, how that word began. I'm going to limit that word. The Democratic Provisional Government, the death of the Provisional Government, what that word stands for, the offensive of the word, the conquering of the word, you know, how it conquers, steps after a takeover, and how we should define freedom This is the introduction. It says Mr. J. Edgar Hoover, director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation and one of the world's most outstanding authorities on communism, has written, "This nation is face to face with the gravest danger ever to confront it. The menace of communism is no simple forthright threat. It is a sinister and deadly conspiracy which can be conquered by an alert, informed citizenry dedicated to the preservation of the principles on which America was founded." Now, this is in 1970 that he's speaking. And he says, maybe our people do not understand what faces us. Maybe your gentlemen or newsmen have not hit the guts of the problem or have not hit hard enough. I believe our greatest danger, this is quotes, is still imperialist communism and those countries which wish to spread their domination throughout the world under the guise of utopia. I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go like this for that four-letter word that we might be under or in or enveloped by at this point. Okay. We see their methods of accomplishing their aims by so-called brushfire wars such as Korea and Vietnam, and by outright invasion such as in Hungary or Czechoslovakia, and even by infiltration of our own society. I think it is naive to believe that all the groups of which we read, advocating the overthrow by force of our present systems and government, are unrelated outbreaks of spontaneous political thought. The proof of what is, what it stands for, and how it relentlessly uses people and then degrades them, using wholesale murder as a way of maintaining itself, is written in bold letters, both by what it says and by what it does. Thus, the definition of democide, death by government. I put that in there. That's not in the book. But it might show you why that word isn't in the dictionary, but you can Google search it and sure as anything, it'll be there, right? It's a new word that was hidden. All right. So now we're going to say how that began. And we go into a large amount of land and a lot of refugees and nobody having anything to eat or drink. And that is January 22nd, 1905. On that day, known thereafter as Red Sunday, starving Russians appeared before the palace of the Tsars to recite their woes to the one whom they affectionately referred to as the little father of all the Russias. Is that kind of like Uncle Sam here? Or even Big Brother? Or the establishment that's going to give you those bottles of Dasani poison water? I mean, think about it. All right. So anyhow, big war, all sorts of problems. And of course, this continuing weakness of power and increase of corruption in the administration of internal affairs finally resulted in 1915 in the successful uprising of the people and the end of the rule of the czars. Okay, that's enough on that page. Now, when we refer to the democratic provisional government and the court of the Romanovs, it says, thus the overthrown was often brilliant, often corrupt, sometimes both, but never responsive to the will of the people. It is not difficult to understand, therefore, that the Russian people in 1917, convinced that the bad old days were gone forever, were jubilant when a provisional government formed under Prime Minister Alexander Kerensky, following the abdication, seemed to assure an end to more than 3 centuries of oppression. Okay. Do you find it synchronistic or even interesting to know that 1917 is a tag year confirming spirit from your divided state of Missouri? That's when the ground plans were laid for what we're experiencing now. And of course, I've done many videos on that. So, all right, we're going to talk about the death of the provisional government and, you know, all these things. But, you know, that word, it claimed its first huge victory over freedom. It has never ceased to attempt to extend that victory and destroy freedoms all over the world. Well, like y'all know, you don't have any freedom, ding-dongs. Isn't that a trip? It is like a time loop. And so when we talk about what this stands for, this is important. Okay. The openly declare that their ends can be attained only by the forcible overthrow of all existing social conditions. Let the ruling classes tremble at a revolution. Again, the theory of a may be summed up in the simple sentence: abolition of private property. And finally, it abolishes eternal truths. It abolishes all religion and all morality instead of constituting them on a new basis. It therefore acts in contradiction to all past historical experience. Now, I know you all know that history has been whitewashed, and that's called hagiography, Hagiography. And the way the rope goes down is once somebody is no longer in their physical body or breathing, see, you can't speak ill of the dead because they're not there to defend themselves. Now, back in the day, that was intended for the little people like us, not for world leaders making critical decisions. And oh yeah, when you realize that they never made the decisions, that they were orchestrated above them in the pyramid of power, you know, then you're saying, wow, amazing how they do that. But while here we sit alive, we're condemned. Criminals, terrorists, all sorts of things that we're accused of, we the people. All right. Now, this is a quote by Doug Kennel of the University of California in Pine Tree magazine in 1970. It is a struggle for the right of every individual to choose how he shall live as a social being. The revolution will not end with the establishment of a new social system, but with the disestablishment of all compulsory social systems. Could this be why we can't hold property anymore? And does that go back to the 1643 land patent that Thomas and Jane Glasscock, my kin, actually held? Not really sure. What about another thing? All land patent land, believe it or not, was turned over to institutions of higher learning, you know, colleges, which theoretically, that's why the tuition is supposed to be non-existent and free. And now in this country, we're going to separate color and give one color a free ride to college and one not. I got one question for you. What about all the sweet cookie babies? Hmm? What about all the multiracial people? What about the refugees? You know, how do we even know who we are these days when everybody's got it so broken up and divided? But that is the game plan. So we really need to stick to it. All right. I am going to skip over this stuff, which is very interesting because I want to get to the playlist. I don't want you to get bored. Everybody tells me I got 2 minutes to make my point, which I think is bullshit. This is actually the timeline of the countries that were taken over, or the provinces, or I guess whatever you really want to call them. You have a full list there, and I have uploaded this book. I mean, anybody can see it. I'm sharing it with everybody. Now, we're going to get to the steps. And I do mark up my books. I've spoken about that before. I mean, absolutely no disrespect. It's one of the ways that I learn and I prepare my materials. And I can put things together a little easier if I have this done. So, believe it or not, 49 times that word communism I marked out with a red pen. So as I go through this next part, I'm going to be leaving the word out, and maybe I won't even do this with my hand. But now we're back to 1955. And it says the American Bar Association issued the following statement. Quote, for those who want to understand, we prescribe not a 15-day trip to Russia, but 15 days in the library studying the conspiracy. So wait a second. We're all getting ragged out and called conspiracy theorists. And right here, we're using this very word. So we see how it transcends generations. And then a lot like the Mandela effect, things get flipped around. And no, we're not talking about that today. Okay. What these men, where's the women? All right. Is, of course, that so much time has passed since the first treachery of 1917. And so many nations, 27 up to 1970, representing some 40% of the Earth's surface, have undergone dictator domination. Is that how we get refugees? All right. However, there are 9 steps used in one way or another in achieving the takeover of a target country. The history books reveal them in detail. Step 1. Since the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, an obvious first technique is by direct, massive military power, which results at once in the desired takeover. Examples of the destruction of people's freedoms and governments by this means are to be found in the Baltic states. A variant of this method is by the frequently used technique of encirclement. Many of the conquered nations were overcome by creating a fierce ring of external pressure applied through the presence just outside their borders of massive military forces. Inside, they're brought to bear any one of all of other 6 steps, all designed to lead up to a contrived crisis, which is used as the occasion for an ultimate demand for majority representation in the encircled government. Once this demand is granted, the kill has been made. Now, do you guys see why there should be no wars between us humans? when it comes down to a group trying to tell you the honest to God truth, that a false flag does have casualties, but they're pointing over at the shiny bauble instead of what's really going on. See, this was going on a century ago. It's an old playbook. It's an old time loop, whatever you want to call it. I just thought we should purge it before the big total eclipse, right? Because it's a coming. Okay. A favorite means of reaching this final point in an encircled country is the device of persuading a target nation to enter unto a coalition government in which they have some representatives. As stated in a 1966 report to a subcommittee of the Committee on the Judiciary of the United States Senate, 89th Congress, second session, past experiences show that exploit their presence in governing bodies to foster their ultimate objective of seizing total power, followed by liquidation of all opposition, suppression of freedoms of the press, speech, and worship, and transformation of a country into a totalitarian police state. Hey, I live in one of those. So here again, this isn't just a bunch of hogwash, right? And it says that you should like reread what I'm getting ready to read. Past experience show that the exploit their presence in governing bodies to foster their ultimate objective of seizing total power, followed by liquidation of all opposition, suppression of freedom of the press, speech, and worship, and transformation of a country into a totalitarian police state. I don't know if anybody knows, but along the path of total darkness with the eclipse, you know they're not going in, right? You know they're hoping for destruction and chaos and war, because then you have the excuse to rain down the iron fist of the word, right? Step 2. Always used to the utmost advantage is the saturation of a target country with propaganda. Some $3 billion a year are used for such propaganda in the United States alone. In flippin' 1970, y'all. You know how much it costs now. Always masked as to its source and frequently unsuspected of being propaganda. Many are taken in by the flattery. In fact, of course, these dupes are used only so long as they are useful, and then they're dropped or liquidated. Are any of you like resonating with that feeling? All right. And much is used to deny, explain, or rationalize the violent actions elsewhere in the world. Step 3. This step involves the creation within the target country of mass agitation. Any issues at hand are used. Stirring up hatred and violence between races is especially sought after because of the deep divisions which such strife creates. Civil turmoil over religion is encouraged for the same reason. Widespread stoppages of work, laborers' violence on picket lines, the demoralizing of essential city services such as refuse removal, and the furnishing of water, electricity, and gas are all diligently encouraged. In short, this is the old device of divide and conquer. They didn't have smart meters back then to do that. Wow. And of course, there are no city services. And how does a state claim bankruptcy? And if they do, why isn't it the jackasses that run the state got to pull it out of their own pocket? Maybe you guys that don't know about small business don't know that, see, that's how they don't have any responsibility. They incorporate or become an LLC. It's only a sole proprietor like my dumbass that has responsibility, and I claim it. So I think that's something to keep in mind as we go forward with this. Step 4. This is a process of infiltration. They've always been the minority. They often win despite the fact, because they are perfectly organized, are absolutely subject to following orders, and make a point of gaining access to areas of influence. Once one gets in, he opens the door for others. If you go to 11 Brand 11, Deborah on YouTube, there's a gal that talks about this all the time. The hierarchy with the pyramid, and how these demonic, influences take over and worm their way up the pyramid. See, it's built just for that. That's why it's controlled what we believe this time to be. Okay, let's see. Oh yeah, here we go. Its representatives to the United Nations assured free entry into the United States by the presence here of the United Nations headquarters. See, they're still pissed because the headquarters of the UN was in what they called a communist country. Okay. Let's see. Sorry about that. Overwhelmingly extent direct operatives of the Russian intel. Wait, okay. Yeah. Now we're talking about the spies. Sure. Its embassies and consulates using diplomatic immunity to the fullest are known centers of espionage. Every American knows some of the results of this espionage. If no more than the story of the stealing of our... Oh my goodness. No more than the story of the stealing of our nuclear secrets. Oh my gosh. Ego flipping maniacs, narcissists. We probably don't want to go any farther right now with that. As an estimate by the United States Department of State indicates that for many years there have been throughout the world some 300,000 trained officers serving in 27 intelligence and security services of those nations. Step 5. This is a classic. This is the technique of demoralization. Sometimes it is superficially called the scare technique, illustrated by such slogans: "Then better red than dead." Do you know how many times I got told that I couldn't get to heaven with red hair because the Lord didn't want any fun up there? Better red than dead, my ass. All right. Although the truth of the slogan may be highly debatable. Thank you, book. Really, the matter goes much further and has been better described by the strategists themselves as the Trojan horse technique. What is this technique and how does it operate? It is possible to conquer the more powerful enemy only by exerting the utmost effort and by necessarily, thoroughly, carefully, attentively, and skillfully taking advantage of every, even the smallest, fissure among the enemies, of every antagonism of interest among the bourgeoisie in the various countries, by taking advantage of every, even the smallest opportunity of gaining a mass ally, even though this ally may be temporary, facilitating, unstable, unreliable, and conditional. Those who do not understand this fail to understand even a grain of Marxism and of scientific modern socialism in general. Those who have not proved by deeds over a considerable period of time and in sufficiently varied political situations their ability to apply this truth in practice have not yet learned to assist the revolutionary class in its struggle for the emancipation of the whole of toiling humanity from their exploiters. See, back in this day, this was when the Dobadelics were still arguing about only one people being made a slave. That's why it's really stupid to be doing it now, isn't it? All right. We're going to skip that page. We're going to step 6. The next step is that of intimidation. Having softened up a target nation by one or all of the preceding steps, the next move is that of making threats of reprisal or invasion if ever widening concessions or coalitions are not granted. Step 7, gain the confidence of the people. Study their problems. Provide help for them. Sell yourself as their friend in aiding them to achieve their goals. In this fashion, gain the people's support, or at least avoid their participation in active defense when they make their final move to conquer. See, we better be saying, yes, sir, General, sir, we are free and brave and proud. As we're getting rounded up, don't you dare call them that C word. Somebody will think you said something like C-U-N-T. You know, like a bad 4-letter word, right? Oh, Lord. Okay, step 8. This is subversion. It explains how Lenin, with 17 supporters, took over Russia's 175 million? I mean, 6 zeros? I don't know, 175? Yeah, million. People with the aid of only 40,000 followers. Do you see the top of the pyramid? And you think we're not involved in this? I mean, okay, it's all right, relax. Subversion has 1,000 phases. It permeates every crack and crevice. It destroys men's spiritual force. It robs them of their standards and principles. It stupefies them with alcohol and drugs. It encourages every vice and sin. And it renders them easy marks for betrayal and well nigh helpless as defenders of their freedom. Already slaves to drugs, sex, gambling, treachery, and fearful of riots, turmoils, and threats, the defenders of freedom are virtually helpless when the Trojan horse suddenly bursts open and reveals the enemy in their midst. You know what this reminds me of? I gotta say it. I know this is far out there. One of my new buddies, Ra, I sent him a couple pictures yesterday of a praying mantis that's still in its, cocoon. And he was talking about how these praying mantis are kind of like AI intelligence and spiritual intelligence combined, and how they treat their prey and how they love it and how they hold it in prayer and then bite their head off. And pretty much that's just what they want to do to us all. So I thought it was interesting, that, here inside this cocoon, right, it's like this, this secret enemy that we have no clue about. Now, some are warning during the path of total darkness, during the eclipse, and this is a for real thing, that you will see these, they look like snakes going all across the ground as this happens. And here again, a Trojan horse looks like one thing, but then it comes across as another, as it's taken people. And so this is why it doesn't matter if you see the eclipse or not. It's the energy, it's the plans that have been made. It is all the different timelines and potentialities coming through these portals and these vortexes. Kind of like how they do war. And of course, this has all been a program as we're learning more and more every day. All right, step 9, it says, this is the end. It is voluntary surrender to communism and the loss of all freedoms. So is that would that be the same as saying it is a voluntary surrender to the one world new government and the loss of all freedom? It's just a question. Now, steps after the takeover. This is fascinating. Step 1. See, and when I start reading this, okay, I've read this so many times in preparation for today, or whenever I was going to do it, that it's real obvious that they're already in the steps after the takeover. We're not back on step 1 back here in 100 years ago, see? All right, step 1, fulfill all promises made in gaining the people's confidence. Step 6 is going to explain it further for us. Step 2, disarm everyone. Nobody's taken my dad's Mylar bat that he made as a policeman. You see, this is my family's glass cock. So they can blow me sideways, can't they? And we'll have a conversation about those things later. But for now, disarm everybody. Confiscate all their family heirlooms and weapons. What if this is just a softball bat? I played softball. What if this is just a pretty yellow bauble that I look through and say, isn't the world a sunshiny place? I mean, it really isn't per se a weapon. It's what I choose to do with it, and maybe it's just a prop to illustrate a point. All right. At the same time, activate a powerful secret police system. Is it even a secret, though, when your property taxes get raised 15% in a town like Ferguson, and you can prove by the DOJ reports and all the money that was given that it was all used to fund the secret military police ops? I mean, could we possibly be any more accurate at our look back? The secret police, as in Latvia, for example, and this is a quote, they recruited youth to report on their friends and schoolmates. We call that a narc. As a result, the feeling of terror and fear crept into family life, and mistrust became a part of daily life. Since those who informed on their fellow citizens were promised rewards and at times threatened with exposure after taking over a country, used ruthless terror against those who can stand in their way or lead resistance in order to paralyze the human mind and make the citizens subservient to that rule. And this is the United States Senate Report, 89th Congress, second session. Step 3, shoot all the leaders of the conquered country and all potential leaders. I thought they went to Club Med, or like, say, you know, the Nuremberg trials, all those naughty Nazis. Remember, they lost the war, boo-hoo, Crimea River, and the next thing you know, they're working for the pharmaceutical companies and the three-letter institutions, you know, that did all that lovely medical experiments, which I'm living proof of, and so are you guys. Oh, okay. At least they didn't shoot us yet. Yeah, shoot them out, shoot them all. This is where the duped intellectual leaders who were used during the preliminary attack period receive their reward. Does that mean they get a clone? I mean, you know, this is some bullshit the whole way around, isn't it? I mean, like when it's right in your face and you still can't go up to somebody at a government agency and go, hey, this isn't fair. This isn't right. I mean, can you fix this? Can you help me? All right. High on the list of those who are always eliminated in this critical step because of their qualities of leadership and their numerous followers, it says, are labor leaders, Freemasons, and prominent Roman Catholics. Now, see, isn't this the pot calling the kettle black? And now you get the whole bang, bang, shoot them up, twist them around, and spit it out story. I mean, for real, most people know that the labor leaders were the mafia. And, of course, we have the black magic as well as the white light magic of the Freemasons. A lot of them were founders of the United States. And, of course, the Roman Catholics, well, line that up with the Vatican and the Jesuits, right? Now, you know, I will say here, and it does say this, is that Freemasons have always been found in the forefront of the battle for men's dignity and freedom. And I don't know how anybody can really deny that. Nor could they say that every one of them were on that program. This is individual just like us. What do we do with this thing? I mean, it doesn't have to be a weapon if that's not what you use it as. Wow. All right, step 4. Take over all communications and transportation systems. Step 5. Set up the new government as the only employer or source of jobs. Everyone will be forced to work where the government dictates, doing what the government dictates, and receiving for wages only what the government dictates. No individual will have any choice in the matter. Jackasses. Step 6. And hey, why can't they just be boss of their own selves? Right? They can't even do that shit. Step 6. Take back anything given to the people in step 1. This was always the plan, and it can now be done safely. Is that kind of like giving your little baby boo-boo a cell phone or an iPad to be a babysitter and keep them occupied, but then taking it away when they're naughty, or like when their eyes are bulging out of their sockets so they can't think? I mean, now you're going to blame the parent for something that was set up by the overseer. See, basically, they're saying you can't win for losing. Step 7. Set up a forced internal spy system with everyone spying on everyone else and reporting to the secret police. This is often achieved as indicated in step 2. And hey, by the way, this was the plan book, you see, for what they pulled off in Nazi Germany, with everybody narking everybody out and people having to hide behind walls. And oh yeah, for all of y'all arguing about whether there was a Holocaust or not, see, that's where bigotry and prejudice reigned supreme, considering that it wasn't one group of people that were murdered during that time. What about the gypsies? What about the women and children? What about the witches? What about the gay people? See, y'all think it's just one group. Not so either, right? All right. And shit, now, y'all know, you've all been spied on. But if you're strong in your power, they can't do nothing to you. They can take away your little physicality. But you're so much more than that, and they know this, which is why the need for control in this modern time of writing these alleged history books. And there's grains of truth, and there's a lot of bullshit, and there's a lot of mind control, sure. Step 8, register everybody. Forbid all travel outside a small area, such as a 10-mile circle. This will make virtually impossible any effective resistance or the organization of any opposing group. The glorious state is now in full operating conditions. You have seen its methods face to face, and you have seen it destroy every freedom. Is it any wonder that freedom-loving people all over the world, including the United States of flippin' America, have a common cause against this dictatorship? Would you like to live under the doctrines, beliefs, and practices of its rule? See, they don't give a shit. But there are no instances where significant numbers of people safely in the free world ever re-entered a communist nation. Thus, the refugees. I'm not even going to say it. All right. There is a vote for freedom. Right, it's an invention. Vote for inventions, please. There is a vote for freedom which no sympathizer can answer. I can't even believe they just said this. I know there's a big word for it too. One of my friends, I'm sure, will know. It says, if communism is not the vicious, hated dictator, but the benevolent friend of the people, why do people everywhere leave it by the millions but never make mass migrations back to it? What's that Munchausen system, syndrome or whatever, like where you wind up loving your torturer or something? Or is that kind of like the gal that gets the shit beat out of her and thinks she deserves it? Or Oh, wow. Even the lowly Christian who finds themselves a sinner instead of someone that was sinned upon. Right. They rock this. It says, how is freedom to be defended against this enemy of individual dignity and freedom? And this is probably where I shut the book. Because you know I'm not going to bullshit you. And I brought you the information that you do need. Here again, why do I have this book? It was my great uncle Charlie's. He was an admiral in the Navy in World War II, and he was a 33-degree Scottish Rite Freemason. Usually these books are burned or buried when the Mason passes. But this was at my Uncle Charlie's River House in Burbus, Missouri. And one day we went in, a few years after nobody had been there, and there was this book on the shelf, and it called to me and it said, hey, Suze, take me home and read me. So, just another book from my library at the Big Yellow House on the Third Cosmic Ray. And I hope you guys realize that you don't need a weapon to be deadly. Just speaking vile things is enough to take the hope out of your friends and neighbors. So may we ought to all come together and remember, we're in it together. Don't think you're better, and don't think you're going to get out of it any better than anybody else. Peace, love, and light. And we'll talk soon. Thank you.